Hello, everybody, and welcome along to another one of these live stream sessions from myself, Sam Gregory, in a snowless Dorset. I'm going to throw to my first guest, Mr. Adrian Beasley. How are you, my friend?
Cheers. Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, we had about 3 specks of snow at lunchtime and it disappeared. But yeah.
Yes. Similar story here. We're both way too close to the coast to have any situations of snow going on. But we welcome you all along. Our friend Paul is going to be with us. He's actually been out on a shoot today, I believe doing something for Fuji and Lee Filters. So necessary traveling work. And logistically, he's a little behind. So he's going to catch up with us and we'll bring him into the call when he comes on. But myself and Adrian are here to get things started. And we're going to be talking about mobile phones and using mobile phones for landscape photography. Adrian's a big proponent of it, as am I in lots of ways. And we do a variety of courses and whatnot through Light and Land, where you can get involved in learning how to use your mobile, and also some of the software things Adrian does too. And we might talk about that a little bit as we go. Just while I wait a moment or two while people are jumping on, as ever, do let us know in the comments box where you might be and where you're watching from. And Lorraine, amazingly, she had snow on the beach in Bournemouth. It didn't make it this far out west, Lorraine, but I'm glad you had some. Snowy Scottish borders. Adele's with us. Fab. Hello, Adele. Hello, Lynn. Hello, Astrid. Hello, Sue. Hello, all these lovely people. I feel a bit like I'm on sort of prime time radio.
Yeah. Shout out.
It's a bit, isn't it? But it's quite nice. What's great is if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, any of the comments, I will see them. I'll pop them up. And so if you have any questions as we go along, do pop them in there and I'll throw them at Adrian and or Paul. It's a bit of a mix tonight. We kind of want to just talk about the photography a little bit and a little bit about the phone side of it. And so we'll try and weave all that together. And so what I'll do, let's just bring in the images, Adrian. And actually, just before we get into this individual images, why I know you and Paul run a workshop about this, but it's an interesting concept that you came up with as opposed to being just a mobile workshop. That's not kind of it, is it? So maybe just explain that a little bit and your thoughts about using a mobile, maybe.
Yeah, I think it came about because it seemed to me that we're treating the phone like a different kind of a camera, and it's really just a camera. And so these days it got to a point really where we could say, do you know what, you could just take your phone and still do everything you would have expected to have done with your DSLR, be it long exposures, be it a bit of ICM and so on, but traditional landscape photos, stick it on a tripod, use a remote control. Everything that you would expect to be able to do, you can now do and get quality images that can print A3, A2. So the idea of the workshop is to kind of work on that. So not specifically looking at weird and funky apps that you get for the phone, which is fantastic, but really focusing more on traditional photography, but focusing on it as a tool that you might use just as you would do your DSLR. So the workshop includes editing and printing. So just to kind of prove the point, really, that the phones are up to that level these days to make good, high quality, fine art prints. So that was the sort of idea, and then focused on a traditional tour. So it's a 4-night or 3-night tour based on the North Devon coast here, and we've got spectacular scenery to go and work on. The nice thing is that you won't be carrying such a big bag with you.
Yes, well, I think that's a big appeal for people. And would you say that initially there was a little snobbery, perhaps, about using a mobile, and do you think we're getting past that now?
I think we are well past that now, yeah. And certainly the mainstream camera manufacturers, there we go, phone manufacturers, have really fully embraced it. I mean, you've got some fantastic cameras coming from, the Android groups, that are using technology from, traditional camera manufacturers. So people like Zeiss have been involved, and Leica and so on are involved in components within the cameras. Apple made a big step with the 11. They really embraced the camera as a photographic tool rather than, I wouldn't say a gimmick, but they really properly looked at it so that the software, the way that the processing is done in camera is very sympathetic to traditional photography rather than hyped up colors and hyped up saturations and hyped up sharpness and so on. They really looked at that well. So they've properly gone down a path They're not the highest resolution cameras. They're not the, maybe the fastest. They don't work in the darkest conditions, but actually the way that they pull the whole system together, I thought was really lovely. So that for me marked a big step. But RAW has been possible for many years now. I mean, my old iPhone SE, an iPhone 5 goes back a long time. That could take RAW images. So RAW has been available to us in phones for a considerable while. And now the automation has been built in with that as well. So you can do, multi-exposure, you can do high dynamic range imaging, and it's really straightforward and simple to use.
Yeah, and we're going to get into a little bit of examples of different times and styles and ways you can use a mobile, even for close-up shots, for landscape vistas, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can kind of do everything with it now. Adrian, just while it's you and I, there's a couple of questions that have come in that we may as well just hit now. So let me just pop this up from John. So what puts me off, says John, is the printing. I assume we need a high-end phone to get an image printed to A3.
Well, so the phones these days are kind of 12 to 16 megapixels around that area. My first DSLR was a 6 megapixel. So, we're already way beyond what the first DSLRs were producing, and they were capable of producing A3 prints. So there's a couple of elements that kind of mark it out for whether it's good enough is the ability to handle the dynamic range. That's kind of number one. So the brights to darks. And the phones have made big improvements with using RAW technology. Now, the RAW file coming from a phone is not quite the same thing as the RAW file coming from your DSLR, but it is deeper. It does have more depth. And simply by doing a couple of shots, so doing some simple bracketing, which we might have done in our older digital cameras, works a treat. So, keeping the highlight details is not an issue these days. So it is possible. And A3, absolutely possible. I mean, I've printed some A3 shots, on my more recent phone, but they're indistinguishable from shots that I might have put up with my DSLR.
Yeah. And yeah, John, I will add to that as well. I've only got an old iPhone 6 here, so nothing spectacular, and I have happily printed up at A3. So yeah, you need something reasonable but not crazy good.
Yeah.
A quick question from Jordan, and then we'll get into the images. But I'm just taking this opportunity to get into these. Adrian, best camera on Android is his question.
I guess on the Android side, I guess the Samsungs are doing a lot of work. There's a lot of money invested in their camera technology that's moving quickly. So they probably brought to market some of the earlier technical leaps, like the taking pictures in low light. So and it's really cunning, actually. So there's a method that we can use with Photoshop for people are used to focus stacking, but there's also exposure stacking that you can do in Photoshop. And what the phone cameras do is exactly that. To work in lower light conditions, they stack multiple frames and they align them. So they auto align, so that even though you're hand holding it and it's going all over the place, it aligns and sizes all the individual shots and then puts them on top of each other and builds the image up. So any astrophotographer will know how that works. That's a common technique for astro. It's just been built into phones. So what's cunning about the phone technology is they're adapting the technology to fit the limitations of what they have. You can't have a wide aperture lens, but you can make narrow depth of field images by doing 3D. You can work out where the subject is and where the background is, and then you blur the background in software. So that kind of technology, which needs two cameras to work effectively, is a cunning solution to a wide aperture lens that you can't fit to a camera like this simply because of the physics. And then the long exposure is another cunning solution. You can't open the shutter on these cameras for more than a second. Although it appears that you can, you can't. It simply stacks multiple frames silently without you knowing. So they're finding really clever solutions. And I guess the amount of money invested in mobile phone camera technology is probably 10 or 100 times that's being invested in current DSLRs.
That's a great point. And I'm so glad you're here, Adrian. Your technical knowledge on this stuff's amazing, and I know that you've got that technical engineering background as well, which is fab. But this is what you get, people, if you go on a course with Adrian. He knows it inside out.
Boy, you're stupid.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. The money they must be piling in, and whenever you see any new phone advert on the TV, they hugely push the camera aspect of it. So they know, even not us in our niche world of being very keen photographers, Joe Public, as it were, they see the camera side of things as a big selling point, and they're going to keep packing on that tech. Because it's going to keep them shifting new units, which is what it's all about for them. Couple of quick mentions here. Colin says, nice to hear mention of Android phones. There can be too much emphasis on Apple phones sometimes. That's probably true.
Yeah.
And Peter mentions, of course, you can kind of upscale your images. He's mentioning the topaz.
Yeah, gigapixels, great. Yeah, I've used that recently for a few things, and it is very good. So, Peter, yeah, you're right, absolutely.
Cool. Well, there you go. For 10 minutes, we haven't even talked about any photos yet, but I think it's all good, relevant stuff. And I think it's interesting for me, as someone who, I'm going to admit, doesn't use my mobile a huge amount. I would only use it if I don't have my normal stuff with me. I've probably been a bit slow in coming to that, but I'm interested in how it affects, potentially or not, how we see things in the landscape, particularly, or in urban environments, whatever, and how that then might affect our voice or our storytelling or our aesthetic or whatever else it might be. But Adrian, let's get into some of these images, and I love this one, so I wanted to kind of lead with it, because for me, as we've already said and outlined, it doesn't matter what you're taking it on, but I wonder if maybe there's a certain extra bit of play or creativity or way of seeing thing, and this might have been an example of that. I don't know. You tell me. Maybe run us through it.
Yeah, well, this is just a patch of grass on the cliffs down in Heartland, and the wind was blowing, and the shapes formed by these, it was like waves in the sea. It was just in these grassy mounds, and we'd gone on a walk. I'd just got my phone with me, intentionally just to take pictures with the phone. And just kneeling down on this, the sea wasn't very far beyond there. It was right on the cliff edge, really. And it was wonderful that you could kind of, move around, get right into it, and you get the framing and capture the image as it was right there. No tripod in this case. It was all handheld, but it was okay because it was quite bright. So yeah, I think I would say there's one downside with the phone screen, and that is you are a bit more decoupled from it than you would do looking through a viewfinder. I think the viewfinder is a good way of isolating the rest of what's going on around you. And whilst you can get sort of loop type things that you might use on the back of your camera screen, perhaps you can use that on your phone. That would be a good way of getting a bit more isolation and being able to focus on the screen. So that could be a good way of doing it, but that's one of the trickier parts. But I think, if you're used to looking for form and shape and so on, then these things are popping out all the time. The phone is a very quick way to grab those moments.
And can I ask about editing? So do you always edit your phone taken shots on a phone or a mobile device, or do they sometimes come into Lightroom on the laptop? Or
they come into my laptop. So whilst I'm obviously a big fan of Lightroom, I have Lightroom mobile on all my devices. If I'm out there and I want to post it straight away, then of course it's perfect for that. So I'll bring it into Lightroom on the mobile, tweak it or whatever, and then share it via social. I can do that. Typically, I actually just airdrop them straight to my laptop and then work on them in Lightroom on my laptop. But what I might then do is drop them back. So either through a collection through Lightroom mobile or directly through exporting one way or the other. Because the old laptop's rubbish for doing sharing to Instagram, for example. Yeah. So the mobile platform's much better for that. But yeah, either way, the tools are really good. And the Lightroom mobile now on the phone is immensely powerful and is very, very similar to the desktop version. Has just a very few differences now, and they're closing those differences down, really quickly. And in fact, all the marketing you see, if you see any marketing at all about Lightroom, it's never about Lightroom Classic that we use. It's about the mobile. The biggest market out there for phones are kids. They're the mass market now. So all their marketing is targeted at, skateboard touting kids.
Those pesky kids, Adrian. There's the day when we could go on a skateboard. Now it's just a guaranteed broken ankle, I reckon, if it was got on a skateboard.
Absolutely.
we didn't spend a huge amount on the image, but I love it. And a couple of people mentioning they thought it was fur. And there is this ambiguity to it. And obviously we've talked about ambiguity a lot on these live streams with black and white, with contrast as well can help with that. Ken is asking, does Adrian shoot only JPEGs? No,
quite the opposite. Yeah, all of these shots are taken on RAW. So now the built-in camera apps sometimes don't support RAW, and I think the Apple one has only just done that on the iPhone 12. But RAW capture has been available for many years through third-party apps. So I don't tend to use the Apple app for my shooting. I use Procam. Procam is a RAW mode. Also, it has a TIFF mode. So if you really want to save a little bit of space, then you can choose TIFF rather than JPEG. But all the shots are taken in RAW. Often they're bracketed, auto bracketed. So it might be 3 or 4 shots per tap of the screen. It will take 4 shots instantly. And that's what's so amazing. So it feels like you're taking one shot, but it's taking a stack of images, which you can then use later very easily.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. John, he's having a bit of fun with us here. All the marketing is towards kids. Good, they are the future of photography. That's absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that will be interesting as to how my niece actually just started asking me about photography, went out and took some pictures with her phone. They're amazing. Yeah. And so for them, that will be their entry point. There will be no hovering over a tripod, fiddling with filters. So I'm excited about what that might actually mean for the creativity, because all of this stuff is kind of doesn't matter. It's what you actually do, isn't it, Adrian? What you do with it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that these things may then affect what you do with it. And I think I've put this in up the top here because we wanted to talk about the fact that I think that some people, and I'd be really interested, guys, if you're watching with us, you know how we work. It's very laid back. Do let us know. I'd be interested how many of you get out and actually use your mobile regularly for shooting photography, and especially landscape. Because I suspect there's a lot of people out there who think, well, I kind of can't do everything I might want to do. And a big one that comes up when I'm talking to people is, well, what about long exposure? Now, maybe just I'll let you explain the various ways of doing that, Adrian, and how it can be used creatively.
So long exposure has been around for, again, a long time. You've usually been able to do that with apps, various apps, or the built-in camera apps. And just like you would do with your standard camera, you put the phone on a tripod. So you can get these little adapters for 10 quid, 20 quid. And they'll go onto a, maybe a very lightweight tripod, so that you can get the stability for a long shot like this. Usually, then you also get these little a little remote control, a little Bluetooth remote control, so you can fire the shutter and get a long exposure. Now, if the built-in app doesn't do it, then there are some specialist apps out there like Slow Shutter Cam, which is a favorite. I think this was probably taken on Slow Shutter Cam. And they kind of blend and blur. Now, it doesn't work the same way as a traditional solution we might use with a DSLR. So with a DSLR, we stick a great big black thing on the front to stop practically all the photons getting through. And the image slowly builds up over time. You can't do that with a phone camera simply because of the noise issues, because of the small sensors. So instead, what it does is it kind of takes it's like a moving window of shots. So maybe if you set it for 30 seconds, it's not a 30-second shutter. It's 31-second shutters, averaged and merged. But that will then walk, so it'll never be longer than 30 seconds. So if you leave the shutter open forever, it doesn't make a C flat. So you can't get to the 5-minute, 10-minute exposures that you would get with your DSLR. But you can certainly do these longer blurs, and you can do obviously the short blurs. So you can do the sort of 10th of seconds, 20th of seconds, the nice shorts, not snapshots, but just get that little bit of movement. All of that is perfectly possible.
Yeah. So I think that hopefully removes queries that people might have about, fear of not having the right gear with them. Are there times, Adrian, you've ever run into where you've thought, if only I'd had my big kit with me?
Well, I guess no. I'm going to say no, because it's like going out with one lens. It's when you force yourself to do that, the opportunities are different, and it opens opportunities rather than closing them often. So the idea of constraining is one of the best ways of becoming more creative. Once you've got a constraint, you'll find creation. You'll be more creative. So actually not having a full bag of lenses, which after all you fail to open up and change anyway because you can't be bothered, or because it's raining, or whatever excuse there is, you take it with you and then you don't use it, is even worse. So actually going out with the phone as a conscious thing to do, rather than by accident, or rather than leaving the camera in the car and take your phone, I do that on purpose, and it's lovely. It's freeing, and you're not thinking about it in the same way. So just as Paul would say, you don't be disappointed about the light that you were hoping to get. You actually simply take advantage of what you do get. That's the right attitude. And the same with taking a phone, I think. Long shots are not great. You've got no telephoto particularly, and macro is tricky. You can get supplementary lenses, which again are tiny, so you can carry them easily. But then it becomes a bit more clutter. But most of the cameras these days have got 2, 3, 4 different focal lengths built in, so that gives you good variety.
Yeah, you do have plenty of options, as Adrian says there. And thank you for the comments coming in. Ali says, I only started using my phone to take photos at the end of last year. It doesn't have the nice feel of a camera. I kind of know what you're saying there, Ali. But it's great for getting different angles. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you can get holders. Some manufacturers are making sort of sleeves that slip in and have a grip, so you can get closer to it, and that does help. But I think the viewing experience is one that's a little bit weaker, or can be weaker, particularly if it's bright. So that may make things a little trickier to take the picture. But again, if you experiment with those kind of neck-based loops, that might improve the experience.
Yeah. And Helen, I took my iPhone 7 on a solo trip around the North Coast 500 Scottish Highlands. I'm a beginner and wanted to keep it simple. Loved it. So much fun. Great. And it's true. That's it. Fun. We're allowed to do that with cameras, everyone, and photography generally. We don't have to be fiddling and swearing, and you can enjoy yourself. And James uses it for his candid street photography. That's a great point, James. And I was going to actually get into that later, because Paul's got a couple of images from New York, and I was going to talk about it might be a time to get shots you wouldn't be allowed to whip out your big camera and start taking.
Absolutely. Nobody questions somebody with a phone. But if you've got a tripod and a backpack, that's it. Straight away, you're enemy number one. So actually, and given what you can get with your phone is stunning. So yeah, that you've got way more opportunities in some situations.
Adrian, I'm just going to ask, before we talk about this image, a question from Colin. Do you know the Android equivalent of slow shutter cam?
If it's not available for Android, no. But I guess if I can do a quick look around and see what we can find, perhaps we can post on the after the session.
Yeah, great. Okay, fab. We wanted to get into using it for the wider vistas as well, because that's something people would worry about, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you shouldn't do. And one of the main reasons I bought this one is because it had a 13mm lens on it, which is 13mm full frame. So I'd been working with the 12mm on my full frame for about 9 months, I think, and I was absolutely loving it. I didn't think I would use it. I thought it would be too wide, but I really liked it. And then, of course, they bought this phone out. And I thought, damn, everybody's got one now. And sure enough, and it is a completely different view. And it's not as constraining as I thought it would be. The super wide is really quite different. And again, it's like you take a different type of shot, but those shots can be very dramatic. It just, it's whatever it is, it's about 100-degree field of view, and it takes in so much. But if it's the sky, it takes in loads of sky. It can be the foreground, so you've got room to put more in. Obviously, you need some drama for it to work, but it can work really well. And I've really enjoyed that. So the ultra wide, sometimes the cameras have different features. The ultra wide at the moment is the poor sibling of the 3 on my phone, but that's due to change on the next generation. They're going to give it some love, but purely having that super wide is great. The next one up is the wide, and that's 25mm wide. That's still pretty wide for most people. And then the standard lens is really only a 50mm, so that's as far as it goes.
A question, Adrian, thank you, from Lorraine. How about zooming in? And historically, you did get quite bad deterioration of quality on some of the earlier stuff, didn't you, with zooming?
Yeah.
How do you find it now, and do you have a hard and fast rule on that?
Well, the camera's only got 12-megapixel sensor. In some cases, it's a bit more. I think some of the Androids are much better than that, actually. But on mine, it's only 12. So yeah, you've got a limit on how far you can zoom in before you'll start to see quite heavy pixelization. But that's why you have 3 cameras with 3 different lens lengths, because each one of those is optimized for that. So in the built-in camera app, I think there's some difficulties. It has a kind of smooth zoom between them, but the problem with that is that it's gonna be using one camera or another, and it might be using a poor setting for the wrong camera, if you like. So it's better to just pick the camera you want. and then use that viewpoint. And I wouldn't usually do any zooming in camera because that's a digital zoom. So I would just leave it as it is, don't zoom it, and then do a little bit of cropping maybe you can get away with a little bit later.
Yeah, and it always depends on output, right? I mean, if you're going to be sharing these on your website, even at, you know, something's fairly small, 1200px or even 1800, you know, it's fine. Yeah. So unless you've just got a billboard ad up on, you know, Waterloo Station or something, it's not the end of the world. And I'm sure they've done those on iPhones these days.
Well, they have, and you know that just goes to show what can be done, and they're genuine as well. So they've used some careful software to be able to scale them up that way, a bit like the gigapixel, but it is possible, and it shows what can be done with a good shot. If the shot is good to start with, then you can do lots with it.
I wanted to bring in some woodland as well, and we've got two slightly different woodland scenes coming up, this one and the one after. So I mean, I know we haven't talked a huge amount about the particular images here, Adrian, so maybe we can do a little bit of that here. Where are you? And it looks vaguely autumnal.
Yes, it was in September, October, November last year, and when we were still able to go out and get some exercise at that point. So this is near to me. So this is the river here, or in the valley here, runs down to Linton and Lynmouth. So it doesn't run up to Linton, but it runs down to and it's a lovely wood actually. And I'd not been there before. One of my local friends here had suggested going and having a look around, and we did it. It's absolutely beautiful. You can walk down quite a way in through the woodland and by the riverside all the way down to Watersmeet, which is a well-known spot. Most people know. In fact, the previous one with the running water, the blurred water, was down further. But yeah, so it's we're very lucky. We've got some fabulous steep-sided valleys here with some really lovely foliage. Light was good, and of course it's easy to capture those moments. It's And I knew that Paul would bring a load of black and white, so I thought I'd better put some colour.
So Adrian, I say, good man. He's put a couple of colour in. I know you're shooting in RAW.
Yeah.
So I suppose, do you find that you don't have issues with, you know, do you find colour rendition ever gives you particular challenges, or because you're shooting in RAW, you're generally okay with that?
I would say, as most people know, I'm much more comfortable in the black and white world. So a color is not something I'm going out to get on purpose necessarily. Now, that is one of the issues with the built-in camera apps, is getting the view to become black and white in camera. Now, the built-in iPhone app does do that, but it doesn't do RAW for me. So I don't tend to use it. So I'll use so I'll be seeing it in color unusually for me. So I'll be bringing home color pictures and then converting them to black and white later. But I would guess that dynamic range is an important part of the color rendering. So so long as you're shooting RAW or you do a little bit of bracketing, then you should get good quality color, I would expect. I've certainly not noticed anything untoward with the colors.
No. Okay. The other woodland one we had, because it has this kind of cooler, colder kind of vibe. So again, it looks just like another nice walk, turning into photographic opportunities.
Yeah. So this was actually up just on the back of Bournemouth Burrows, actually. So there's one of Europe's largest dune systems just around the corner from us, and this is walking out towards that. And it was beautiful. The light was rather beautiful, and it's quite an interesting overgrown area. There's footpath here, but it's not heavily used by any means. So I was quite surprised. I'd seen it on a map, and I hadn't actually been that way. So I just potted along with my phone, and it was lovely actually. So the phone, you've got, again, this is a wider shot. You've got those choices, and you can make those choices really quickly. So going between 12 and 50 mil is 2 taps. So actually, you've got quite a flexible tool in your pocket and can take those, maybe more intimate portrait, longer shot versus the wider shot to bring the detail in. So it is very flexible. And the softness of the light in here, I thought was lovely at the time.
Do you find it's a bit of a battery eater? Because I know they've been getting better, haven't they, phone batteries? But, especially if you're editing and shooting throughout the day, do you carry spare power backups and things?
Funnily enough, I haven't. No. So I'm to be honest, my mirrorless is way more power hungry. I take usually when I go out with my mirrorless, I've got 5 batteries with me, And I don't use all 5, but often I can be getting a little bit worried that I might be having to put the last one in. So the mirrorless has been a big issue for batteries, for me anyway. I think they've improved the technology there as well. So I probably need to get a new one. But the phones have increased their batteries, and I think on the Android side, I think they've done especially well with pumping up the battery capacity as well. So I think if you're careful with screen brightness and not constantly switching it on and off, and looking at your mail and all the rest of it, I think you'll probably be okay. But it's not something. It's funny. I've not felt the need to have to get a battery, so it's clearly never got to that point. And yet I'll come back, walk on the Heartland Peninsula or whatever. I'll come back with 500 shots.
Wow.
So and it's not been an issue with the battery. Storage
maybe.
I've got a lot of storage.
Yeah. That's probably something to thinking about, isn't it?
Yes.
So I'm hoping Paul's actually going to be with us in the next couple of minutes. So I've been keeping my eye on that. Multitasking going on here, presenting, editing, communicating. Do you think then, Adrian, here's one for you, a bit of a big one. I was kind of hoping to save this till the end, but I'm throwing my Hail Mary. Do you think there'll be a time where you won't have a camera, quote unquote, a mirrorless or a DSLR? I know it may not have a DSLR now, but you would revert purely to phone?
I think it'll just change and morph with how things typically develop. Things kind of coalesce, they come together, and it takes on board other functions. I mean, these things. This is not a cheap camera. This is quite an expensive camera, so it's not really a cheap way to get a camera. It's just the fact that it combines several features. That's what seems to be the big saver. So I did see early on there was a move in the other direction, which was from cameras to phones. So rather than from phones to cameras. And there were some interesting devices that were essentially a camera with the phone built in. So that Samsung did that. And that was a really interesting idea. I don't think it ever went anywhere, but they were pushing the boundaries to see what might work and what might stick. And I think that will constantly happen. So the weaknesses will be addressed, and whether they can address those with cunning software tricks or whether they will add a little extra bit of hardware, each time, as they've grown the phone, those lenses, well, people hated those. So the lumps on the back, that was a big cause of concern. Now it's almost as if they're emphasizing those lumps. Now they're actually building those in. It's become a stylistic element. So because it's making it seem like a real camera. So it's hard to predict where it will go, obviously, but I think that there'll be, you'll have them both. You'll definitely have them both. And at some point that you'll stop taking your big old camera out as often, and then you won't realize, because it's still a camera. It's just in a different shape and does a few other things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, without any further ado, I'm going to bring in our third and most important leg. Good evening, Paul.
Hello. I am so sorry I'm late. It's just been one of those. It's been one of those days. So I can only apologise. And I am ashamed to say that I am late. But you've probably had the best half anyway, so you can leave me.
Poor old Adrian. I think he was worried he was going to lose his voice. I was just throwing to him all the time. No, Paul, it's great to have you. I know Paul's had some fun travel situations today, so I really appreciate you jumping on with us, Paul. We are the three amigos, and so I'm really happy we can be together. We've been hitting a load of Adrian's images. I front-loaded them, and we've obviously been talking about using your phone and all the creative things you can do with that these days as well. There's been some fab questions coming in, and you couldn't really have timed it any better, because we're now into a couple of your images, I think. I know, it's as if we knew what was coming. And we've talked about, Adrian's been really great in explaining kind of how he uses his mobile just as another camera, which of course it is. And I know you and I have talked a little bit about mobile phone stuff on here, Paul, but as we sort of use this as an intro photo for it, how have you found using your mobile has maybe changed how you see things or how you shoot?
Yeah, it's really interesting when you think about it, because now I use it as a sort of a sketchbook to start with, but but I tend to work from a sort of sketching thing where I sort of photograph things as I'm kind of seeing or receiving them. I then start to refine the image with the phone until actually I get to a finished image, rather than sometimes using the bigger camera, because it's sort of all there, and the phone is such a natural extension of you that I think to view it as a phone now, it to me feels wrong. I view it as a camera. And I as I was sort of sitting in the wings waiting, I was hearing Adrian say that, you know, it's an expensive camera, and you know, £1,000 for a phone is a lot of money, but £1,000 for a camera is still an awful lot of money. But you're getting a very, very powerful, sophisticated camera that is so intuitive that it makes photography so accessible to people. You know, I absolutely love it. I love phone photography. You know, you don't get in people's way for a start. You don't have to put a tripod up. And for me, that's fantastic.
I know why you don't want to carry a tripod, Paul. It's sheer laziness, but we'll come to that later. Tell us, we did talk, actually, before you jumped on, we talked about the fact that for a lot of younger people, kids, this is their entry point. This is photography for them. And I know you have a couple of kids in your family. How do you find, you know, do you have experience with younger people kind of just treating this as totally their way of expressing themselves photographically? And have you seen that create some interesting results? Yeah,
I mean, I think young people see the world very differently to us. And their sort of natural curiosity, there's a sort of fearlessness about their image making, which is great. Whereas we come at it from a photography point of view. They're coming at it from just an enthusiastic thing. I mean, we would never have dreamt of taking pictures of our food at the table. You know, now, you know, phone food photography is a fine art. You know, and that was inspired by young people taking pictures of burgers.
Yeah.
It still baffles me, but even occasionally I find myself photographing food, and I'm like, "What am I doing?"
So this is ICM, is in-camera McDonald's, isn't it?
In-camera McDonald's, yes, it is indeed. Yeah.
Well, I think it's fascinating. I think it'll be really interesting to see how that moves in the next few years, and what sort of imagery people might come up with, and really how they tell stories. And, you know, from a reportage point of view, obviously the phone allows you into places. It's much smaller. Adrian's already talked about the fact that, you know, you're not getting noticed when you've got your phone up, because everyone's got their phone up. If you're in a city in New York, London, it doesn't matter, you know. But can I, Paul, can I just pick up on one thing here? And then we'll kind of get back into the swing of it. This is an image of yours, and we were talking about using the phone for doing slightly longer exposures, and there's various ways of doing that. Did you do it by having the phone on something, or did you do it by kind of faking in is not quite the right word, but you know what I mean, by using a software app to bring that long exposure look?
This is using the Spectre app. Which I absolutely love for long exposures. You've got a controllable sort of shutter speed in inverted commas, so you've got between 3 and 9 seconds. And I really enjoy using this, because it sort of feels more like I'm doing a proper long exposure, but I'm not. And I think, I mean, Adrian knows the ins and outs of the technical side of what the iPhone does better than I do. But I really just love the feel of creating long exposures on my phone. You know, either doing them through the Spectre app or using the live mode within the phone, and then just, you know, sort of going through the picture options a bit later on, and you can create some beautiful pictures. You know, and if you really want to create a very, very long exposure, you can then just merge them in another app. So, I mean, I guess in some ways, phone photography is, to a lot of people, cheating. But actually what it's doing is taking out the the sort of the technical barriers for people.
Yeah.
You know, if you show somebody how to simply do a long exposure on a phone, they'll be addicted.
Yeah,
you know,
it's a lot easier than sometimes showing them filters and things. So the question from Trisha there was, so was that handheld, Paul?
Yes, that's handheld on the iPhone for, I think it's about 5 seconds. But as Adrian, I'm sure will be able to tell you, it actually, does it shoot short segments of video, Adrian, and sandwiches them together?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the Spectre one works, but typically what they're doing is they're taking a maximum of a second and then merging. So it's an average shot and then realigned and then they're merged, exposure merged. So it feels like a 5-second shot, but it's actually not. And it's doing the real-time analysis of each of those frames and putting them all on top of each other, so they're all stacked. So it's very clever.
Yeah, but I think, you know, one of the things that when you're making pictures with a phone is you don't actually need to know how it does it.
No.
You know, it doesn't matter how it achieves the look. It achieves the look that you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't live with that, though. I have to know. I have to.
I know.
I can't sleep until I know.
Whereas I sleep more soundly in my bed, not knowing.
And this is why these two are a great combo, because if you want to know, you can find out, because Adrian will tell you. And if you don't want to know, just stick to Paul and you'll be fine. But, you know, joking aside, it's the results that matter, isn't it? And what we're always doing with our cameras is trying to tell stories or impart a mood or connect to the landscape in a different way. And this is a lovely shot, Paul. Are we? Where are we? In Wales? No, we're not.
We're in Glencoe. We're actually, if you want, I'll set the scene for you. Imagine a lovely breakfast has just been brought out to me in the dining room of the King's House Hotel, the newly refurbished King's House Hotel in Scotland. And I'm sat there with my cup of coffee, looking out at that scene, thinking how beautiful it is, joined by my workshop participants who look out of the window, see how beautiful it is, run off to their rooms, grab cameras, get dressed, all the rest of it. And I sit there with my phone, press it against the window, photograph the scene in a very similar way to how I would have done had I gone upstairs, got my camera, got all my cold weather gear on, run outside. But I was still able to enjoy my breakfast and my cup of coffee. And then I sat down, I put my phone down and I sat down. I watched people rush out of the hotel, tripods, scarves, you know, shoes half on, and the light had gone. And it was starting to rain. And all of a sudden I was thinking, I don't want to look smug, but a phone is so convenient at times, because I didn't really want to leave my breakfast. And like you said, Sam, I am quite lazy. You know, I will take the line of least resistance like any river. You know,
nothing wrong with that.
Sit at breakfast and be able to create a photograph. It just made me so happy.
He's easily pleased, especially when there's food involved. But it's absolutely true, and that reactiveness and that speed of reaction is obviously a big benefit. And I think what's really interesting actually is we walked through some of these, and Adrian, we've got a few more of yours and a few more of Paul's to go through. Is that I obviously recognise them all as yours between you. You know, you still have your vision, your aesthetic, and your way of connecting photographically. So there is no barrier to that with the equipment. I'm just going to say, whilst we have a little minute pause here, thank you everyone for coming along as always. We really appreciate it. I love the fact that we've got this little community of people now that tune in and watch us, especially you guys that come live. That's really appreciated. And all the comments tonight have been great. So do keep them coming and I'll ping them up. So what I would say before we just quickly move on, Adrian and Paul both do a series of workshops. They have done a landscape photography workshop using your mobile. That is fully booked, I'm afraid, in October. But I would imagine with a certain amount of persistence or knocking on the door, you never know, they might even be able to do some more dates. and this is the end of my little ad, everyone, don't worry. But what I would say is, certainly in the next month or 2 or 3, if you're at home and you're in need of a bit of a photography fix, both Adrian and Paul are running a variety of online photography workshops through Light and Land for various things, software, shooting, all sorts of things to get yourself creative. So if you want a bit of a jab in the arm for that, not that one, then jump over to the Light and Land website. I knew Paul would like that. And check out the tutor pages for Adrian and Paul. All right. And you'll see what's going on with both of them. So there you go. A little bit of an advert, I'm afraid, but that's obviously a nice thing to talk about. So we are here, Paul, in a situation where, again, and I don't want to labour the point too much, but where obviously just having your phone on you is a great thing from a point of view of space, security, being innocuous, as you hopefully were.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's taken from the Top of the Rock in Top of the Rockefeller Center in New York, and I've been going through a phase of photographing things with my camera and photographing them with my phone, and I find that when I'm in a workshop situation, the client comes first. The client's pictures are most important. So if I get the opportunity to photograph something, that's fantastic. But if I don't, I use my phone. And I've still got it, because you can still put all of your thought, your compositional thought, your processing thought into the image. So it will still retain your style, your look, your feel. And the Top of the Rock at sunset is incredibly busy. It's like the world and his wife is up there photographing with mobile phones. I mean, who would think you'd go and photograph New York with a mobile phone? But we're up there with our kind of cameras and little tripod on the stone work at the very top, and the quality that you can get off the phones is incredible. The detail, the resolution, it's all there now. And as long as you get the focus and the exposure right, you've got enough information to process the image in a way you want. And those two things, focus and exposure, are so controllable, regardless of whether you use the in-camera facility or whether you use a third-party app. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't get to grips with, is they can control the phone camera as much as they can their own camera at home, whatever sort it might be.
Yeah. I love even just the gradations here in a black and white. It's so subtle. It's so nicely handled. And that is totally possible on the technology. James mentions that could be an album cover. You're spot on, James. And well, maybe Adrian's got a new album coming out soon. But I'm pretty sure there is an Oasis album from the top of there, but it's in colour.
I think there might be. But
am I right?
Look like a hypodermic, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's your new COVID shot, Paul. I bet you didn't know that. There's a couple of questions. Sorry. So, do you think? So Barbara's. I mean, we've kind of touched on this a little bit, Barbara, in between other bits and bobs. But do you think the quality compares well with a camera image? And I think we're basically saying yes, quite often. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, chaps?
Yeah.
I think,
sorry, Paul. Did you want to add a little bit more there?
No, I was just going to say. I think you work within the parameters of the equipment that you've got, and as long as you don't go too mad on over processing and building it up into something, then the images hold up really, really well, and they print really, really nicely. So
yeah.
Adrian, can I just throw this at you? Ken's asking, is there an electronic equivalent of controlling depth of field?
Yeah, because obviously you don't have an aperture control in your phone. Aperture's fixed, so you don't get the traditional control for depth of field, but the technology varies between cameras. But the process they're using now is it's called the portrait mode, for example, in the phone, in the iPhone. But essentially, it uses, when it's got more than one camera, it can work out the distance to objects, because it effectively gets 2 offset pictures, just like you do with your brain and your eyes. So you can work out how far things are away, and then the software can blur artificially the out of focus elements. Now, some of the cameras do a better job than others at that, but that technology is still in its youth, but it's going to get a lot better. And so you'll be able to have direct electronic control of depth of field or software control of depth of field, because you just don't have the traditional tool for it in the camera. Great,
cool. And John has piped in Oasis Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. I knew it, John. And as a Mancunian, I feel ashamed that I couldn't name the album. And when I next go back, it's all fair to throw stuff at me, which actually does commonly happen anyway. So thanks for pointing that out, John. Adrian, just a lovely, cool shot here, beautiful shape, and this is what can be great for exploring angles, light, line, all the things we do.
Yeah, as Paul said, I mean, actually, this was taken on the Prague workshop that Paul and I did. I was going to say last year, but it wasn't last year. It was the year before. Was it the year before?
Nothing happened last year.
It can't have been last year. So, but yeah, so because I didn't have my big camera with me, I had my phone with me. We were wandering around the streets, and yeah, you can. These moments are everywhere, and so that simplicity of light. In the end, it's a camera. It doesn't matter, how big it is or what shape it is. It's a camera. And often the picture is more about the image than it's about the technology or the number of pixels. It really doesn't matter how many pixels are in that picture. I couldn't even tell you. In fact, it's not going to be many because it's on a screen, so there's only a few there. But it doesn't matter, does it? Because it's the image that matters. So whatever tool you've got with you.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, just time-wise, I'm going to just walk through a few here. Towards the end, because we Adrian and I went into deep on some stuff earlier on, Paul. But Adrian, this is again, this is Heartland.
So, around the corner from where I live. So, and one of the reasons for putting this in is the sky. The weakness most phone shots is the sky burns out, and if you're taking just JPEGs, that's irretrievable. In this case, it's a DNG. This is a RAW file, but it's a handheld auto bracket. So just take the picture, and it's taken 3 or 4 DNGs just like that, and then Lightroom will stick them together in one go. Bingo, you've got a full range, dynamic range that's enormous actually. So the dynamic range is very strong. So you've got all of that detail in the cloud. It hasn't burned out. Plus you've got the shadow detail to play with too. And I think this might even have been a panorama sweep. So I'm doing click, 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 click. I've got 4 times 4. I've got 16 images, and then you press a button in Lightroom and it does the whole thing for you. So it's remarkable what the technology can do.
Yes, indeed. And to talk about technology, we're live streaming. Who'd have thought a year or two ago this would be what we'd be doing on a Tuesday evening? Yeah. I've given up the football for this, everyone. So no, what I would say as we walk through these final ones, everyone, we've got a few images left to share with you. And as I say, I do appreciate you being with us. If you're enjoying what we do, this is free. It's unbelievable, really, isn't it? I can't believe it. You do know that, chaps. Hit that like button, all right? If you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, the like button is our Patreon equivalent. Hit the like, hit the love, hit the share, hit the whole damn screen. That'd be lovely. We've got a couple more, like I say, to get into. We've got this very dark and moody. Adrian, this is
so this is a lovely place called Lee Bay, which is just up around here, and it's a fabulous secluded bay. I say secluded. It's a very compact place. Has fabulous foreshore when the storms have been in. You get lots of little tiny shells and lots of colourful stones, and there's a lovely seam of pink quartz that runs down the beach. It's a beautiful place to go. So it's one of the places we would typically go to when we're out and about. And it has this wonderful place that's right on the front here, and gets a bit of a pounding during the winter months. But and you can stay there. I'm not sure if it's changed hands recently, but you could go there with half a dozen of your friends and stay in right on the beach, which is fabulous. So yeah, it's one of my favourite locations to go to.
Nice. A couple of people mentioning they enjoy that image, Adrian, and people looking at their phone with a fresh pair of eyes. Absolutely. Paul, we've got a couple of yours kind of just to bring us to a finish, but do hang on, everyone. We've got a few more nice ones, and we're going to talk about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. Lovely. This looks like we're just at the lovely side of a lake somewhere, Paul, are we?
Yeah. I can't remember which lake it is actually.
A wet
I think it might be. It's probably the Lake District. Looking at the stuffy barbed wire, I would imagine it's the Lake District. Oh yeah, that's it. I was with Adriano.
I'm glad we've got the people who are with you on the Zoom. It's always good, isn't it?
It's so nice that that people are able to remind me where we were. But you know, again, it's just seeing something, and I mean, part of it, in a way, I guess, is I could be classed as a lazy photographer, because I'll often reach for my phone to photograph something, and then I'll feel I've got it. I've got what I wanted, so I don't then automatically go and get my camera to repeat it, because I don't feel I need to do it again. You know, if I've got what I was feeling, then I almost don't need to kind of, repeat myself.
Yeah. Well, that moment can be quite transient, can't it? It can be quite quick. That little connection of, the light dappling here on those leaves, I can kind of feel it from the image. And that it is, you connect to something, and it's then is when you need to do it, isn't it? And share that moment with the location, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Cool. We've got a couple more, everyone, and I'm just putting my foot on the accelerator a tiny bit for time purposes. But Adrian,
sure. Yeah, so this is a little stretch of road that leads up from Exford up over Exmoor towards the coast, up towards Porlock Weir, and it's a lovely section. Actually, it's one of these things that you'll be going across the moor, and the road drops down and comes back out of this, and as soon as you come over the sort of the brow of the hill, it's a really beautiful location. It's just the way the trees are collected together, and it's got that classical Exmoor look. And it's pretty moody often. Thank you, Lynn. It's very moody often, and it can be wet and miserable. And it was cold and wet and miserable. Oh, and there's a really interesting thing I discovered about the phone in the rain. Right, if you're taking a wide-angle shot like this with a 13, imagine with your DSLR, you've got a whopping great lump of glass on the front. Right, what's the probability of a raindrop landing on that? Right,
100%.
high. Right, the phone has got a tiny little bit of glass there. You'd be amazed how long you can shoot in the rain before you get a drop on there. And then as soon as you get a drop on there, you can't see a damn thing. So you clean it off and you're off you go. So
you'll soon know.
It's just great. So shooting in inclement weather is a definite underrated benefit of phone.
Yeah. And whenever you get that moisture on a road like that, and it's been raining, it can be a lovely thing to do with black and white.
I love it.
Or puddles in the fields. You get that great kind of contrast between the density and the brightness.
Yeah. The picture doesn't have to be about anything. It's about the light.
Yeah. Lorraine's just asking a tech question, and which we've covered, but maybe it will be helpful, Lorraine, just to clarify this. So can we clarify, if you want to take a picture in RAW, you have to go into a specific app. And is the camera's normal phone settings just a JPEG? Adrian, this may depend on the phone, I presume.
Yeah, up until in the iPhone range, up until iPhone 12. iPhone 12 introduced the proper RAW concept to the basic built-in camera app. Well, I say basic; it's a great built-in camera app, but it didn't have the ability up until the 12 to do RAW. But if you download some of the camera apps like ProCam, which is the one I use, it's just another camera app. You can just sit it on your desktop right next to the standard built-in one and use it as your main camera shooter, and that can do RAW or TIFFs, and they've been able to do that for many years. So RAW capability has been available in the cameras for many years, and I say other camera brands or other phone brands, may well be their built-in apps allow you to have RAWs stored by default. It's possible, but if they don't, the third-party apps are all out there.
Okay, cool. Hopefully that answers the question nicely, Lorraine. If everyone can bear with, I think we've got, technically there's 2 images, but over 3 shots. And I'd wanted to touch on this with Paul because he gave me the phone version and his GFX version. So I thought, and presumably Paul did that for a reason. Now he's going to tell me, no, I just sent you both files by accident. So just bear with us 5 minutes, everyone, and we'll get into this. So Paul, these 2 images, and I'm just going to toggle between them, and maybe just explain why you sent me both and what the point maybe you wanted to make from that.
Well, I think, people keep saying it's not real photography. It's not real photography if you're using your phone. it is real photography. And if you have a phone, you are equally as capable of shooting very high quality images, as somebody with a camera. So this was taken on my iPhone 11 and the other one was taken on my GFX. So yes, there's more information in the GFX file, which is the slightly softer one. But that's also the finished image. The other one is the image almost straight out of the camera. So it needs a little bit of support in the processing, because I find it's just a bit too crisp for me. It just needs softening off. But with a bit of skill from Adrian, that black and white image would look almost identical to the GFX image, and printed at 8x8 or 10x10, you would be hard pushed to know the difference. And there's so much snobbery around phone photography, and yet it's as versatile, if not more versatile, than a heavier camera. You don't need a bag, you don't get stopped, people don't ask you if you got permission. And then, that's the one I took this morning, Sam.
Hey, we can do it. The technology is all here, Paul. So Paul pings me this today and says, "Can we sneak this in? I did it this morning."
Yeah, I did it. We were filming the new Fuji, the GFX 100S. I have to get that in, and there's only one in the country. And had I photographed this on that, I would probably have dropped the camera off the gantry at Burling Gap. But I'm quite happy to hang over there with my phone because I can hold it. And the long exposure thing there has come from shooting in live mode, so you've got a lovely bit of everything. But what got me was the rhythm of the waves with the black banding and then the kind of the dusting of snow on the beach. I just fell in love with it. And would I have bothered setting up a tripod to do? Do you know what? Knowing I've got the capability in my pocket, which sounds very wrong, I'm gonna use the thing that's the simplest to use, the most intuitive to use. Plus the fact that it was gusting at 60 miles an hour down there today, and to be able to still photograph long-ish exposure in those gales, it is just fantastic. The tripod would have been all over the place. There'd have been all sorts of camera shake. That to me is what it's about. It's taking the line that works in the conditions that you've got. Happy boy.
Happy boy. We like happy boy. David, not so happy. He bought a GFX after doing a workshop with you, but we won't go into that.
what I'm hoping is that nobody from Fujifilm is watching this, because I was going to say,
it's not a great ad, is it?
But maybe Apple will come on to me and give me the iPhone, whatever they make it.
What Paul's fumbling to say is just you wait till you see what he did with the big camera. But we're going to wrap up, everyone, for time reasons. But just a couple of thoughts from you guys just before we do that, though. I'm going to just mention what's coming up next. So listen, guys, for various reasons, mostly logistical, we're going to just put a little break in here, and we're going to start going fortnightly just for the next few weeks and months. As I say, it might depend a little bit on lockdown situations, everything else. So we're just going to have a little break now for a week, and then myself, Adrian, and Verity will be back. The three, I don't know, we can't be the Amigos because we're the Amigos. But we're going to be back on Tuesday, the 23rd of February, Quiet Paul, and that will be usual 8 o'clock, and that will be another one of our Creative Choices session, which was really cool. Last time, having Verity along with us. A lovely comment here from a Paul Sanders, who's very sorry for being late. So well done. Thank you, Paul. So I'm going to be inviting you guys to upload your raw files again to the Dropbox folder. We've got a good number from last time, but it'd be great to have some more. And you know what? If you've been out shooting on your mobile phone in RAW after this, bang some up from your mobile phone. We'd love to see them, preferably RAWs though, everybody. JPEGs are very difficult to do anything with on the edits. So keep your eye on the Light and Land stream, and I'll come up with a little video reminder, as I've been trying to do recently, and I'll put the Dropbox link everywhere. So that session really works when you guys participate, and we hope you will be involved in that. But just as I flick through some of the comments here, just a quick wrap up from you both as a sort of rallying call for using your mobiles, everyone. Adrian, to you first, if I can.
Yeah, it's all about the image. Okay, so whatever tools around you, if you've got the phone in your pocket, take it with the phone. And it's what you see. It's not about the technology anymore. We're not going to reconcile every 12 megapixel shot that was taken in the past to the dustbin, are we? So therefore, this camera is good enough to do everything we ever did before. So it just stop thinking about it as a second-class tool.
Yeah,
it's an expensive camera. It's not a cheap camera.
Yeah, that's it. Paul, any last final thoughts from you, my friend?
I think that photography, however you do it, is about enjoyment, and I think using your phone actually increases the enjoyment and connection with the moment because it's less intrusive. So just enjoy your photography, however you take it. Just enjoy it, and stop worrying about the technology and the pixels, because they're irrelevant. Really, totally, as far as I'm concerned, irrelevant.
Yeah,
it's the image that matters.
Yeah, and as James points out here, and absolutely right, isn't it? The best camera is the one you have with you. And James, that's a cracker to end on, mate. Thank you for your comments throughout this, and indeed to everyone. It's been super fun to see all you guys. I think we've had a great session tonight. All right, do me one big favor, like I say, hit the like button, hit the love button, hit the share button, just hit everything. Hit buttons, and get out with your mobile phone, take some shots, and upload them to the Dropbox thing for the session with myself, Adrian, and Verity, and we will keep an eye out for them in the next lot. But from us, it is the end of this evening. We do appreciate you being with us. 2 weeks' time, like I say, come back here on Facebook or YouTube. But for myself, Adrian, and half of Paul, good night. Take care, and we'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.
Good night, bye.